Hey there, welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast. If you are a new listener or if you are a long-time listener, we're so happy you're here. My name is Leah Piper. I am your co-host and your Tantra expert.
And I'm Dr. Willow Brown, your Taoist expert here at Sex Reimagined. And today we are interviewing Erica Wiederlight, who is the confidence coach, expert, and speaker. Her work highlights self-love, dating, embodiment, pleasure, burnout, and sexual empowerment. So it sounds like a real range that she covers. And she helps clients go from feeling dusty and crusty to feeling fabulous and radiant. So she is the podcast host of the top-rated show, Welcome to the Wider Life. And her work has been featured in Galore and Cosmopolitan magazine. In addition to her extensive coaching background, she's also a public speaker who's spoken at hundreds of venues. So we are so excited to have Erica on the show today. You are going to love this episode.
That's right. So tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Erica.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
We have Erica in the studio. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so thrilled to drop in with you today about your work with, helping people find more pleasure in their bodies and in their lives, helping people let go of the things that are holding them back and find their way to more joy. So how long have you been doing this work? Maybe you could start by telling us how you came to this work. You know, what was your own journey with it? What's your genesis story?
Yeah, I always say this is high school me would be, and I don't know if this resonates for you both, but high school me would freak out if I knew what I'm doing now, just because I'm like, oh no. But me as a child, like, this is who I was. It's my authentic self, and this is, how I express myself. So in ways I'm shocked, in ways I'm not shocked. But for me, it kind of was a quintessential dark night of the soul, where I was battling and, going through my own personal demons and facing a lot of grief and death, that this work really flirted with me and invited me in, and I was like, okay. And so I always joked I was resistant to it. I was like, I'm not going to make this into a business. This is just for me. This is for me. And something was always like, that's cute, Erica. Like, it's fun.
Yeah.
So we're pulling you in.
You were getting the call from the universe. Hey, we need you. Show up over here.
Yep. And I was like, oh, no. It's, that's not for me. Like, I'm just this is just, for me personally. And LOL, here we are. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
I love it. So what first sort of hooked you in and called you forward? And at what point did you finally succumb and shift to doing it as a profession?
Yeah, because I know you've worked with Mama Gina and with Layla Martin. You're a Vita coach. So yeah, tell us about like what got you into the work and then that Eureka moment when you had to answer the call to do it professionally.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Eureka moment was just living at a place where I was like, do I really want to live my life like this? Like, I really hated my body. I had a tumultuous relationship with food and sexuality. I'm like, is this what I want? So that was my first kind of to traditional life coaching, where I was like, I don't want to, I knew it was coming, but I was like, I'm just doing traditional life coaching. And then I remember, this is such an ingrained memory in my bed at the time. I was living in New York City. And I had this beautiful like Buddha picture. It was on parchment right over my bed. And I remember I looked at it one day and I had the word Tantra come in and sexuality and feminine. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm like, no. Like, I knew it was coming. I was like, I know. And I remember being like, I know. Like, can we not do it now? You know what I mean? And so it was my flirt. It was my invitation of getting me in. And how I started the business, again, totally resistant. I'm not doing a business. I'm just doing a coaching session. I'm not doing a business. I'm just having group sessions, but not calling it that. And so it was from a place of like, I must share this with the people that I love. I must, help this person if they're asking for help. So it really came from the desire to be of service, especially when I had the tools and technology to help folks.
Love that. And I'm just so curious, like what's shifted for you as far as your relationship to your femininity, your sexuality, your body, your confidence? Like, in turning it into a professional offering, like what's been an internal alchemization that you've experienced?
Oh my God, everything. Everything. I think, for me, I kind of mentioned this before, like my relationship to my body, I was riddled with anxiety. And I was blessed, to go to therapists and this and that was of service, but nothing did the work, or nothing had me hold myself as much as the pleasure work. I never met myself that deep before. And as someone especially that has my relationship with food, with body image, it was very hard for me to be embodied. It was very triggering. I was like, that's the last thing I want to do. For me, being in my body was, let me be in my body so I get a goal, so I look like this.
Right.
And so for me, this has been, I'm always kind of shocked, like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this in my lifetime. I can't believe it, because I was filled with so much self-hate. So people that knew me, they're always like, I cannot believe the journey that you went on of like real self-love, real confidence, real embodiment, real self-care. I never knew those. Like they were catchphrases, but I didn't know what it meant to live like that. And for me, I kind of am like, wow, like it's such a blessing how this has touched and changed my life.
Well, I think that's such an important thing to highlight, is that those are just like buzzwords until they're not, right? And so you actually know what they are and how to live them and to actually implement and practice. So I'm imagining, I don't know if this is true, but I'm imagining that's a lot of what you teach clients, is like how to turn those buzzwords into actual lifestyle and changes. What are some of the ways that you do that?
Oh, I love that. So many things. And you nailed it. Embodiment, pleasure. It's funny. Same. Like for a while I was walking like, what do they say? Like a floating head. And I was like, embodiment, pleasure. And so that's part of how I connect with people, is they're like, I don't think I could do this. And I'm one of those people that's like, let me tell you, if I could do it, you could do it. So, and I pride myself on that I've seen some things that I never thought I could go through this journey. So that's why I feel very blessed when I get to hold people through their triggers, through their resistances. And I'm like, I got you. I know this is really scary. And I get to be with them through all of that. And one of the gifts, as you probably know, is having this business, I have to really show up. And so this has been one of my deepest spiritual practices, is walking my walk and talking my talk. I mean, like really embodying this work for myself, but to hold people properly, or what I would consider properly.
Yeah. Everything you're saying is really resonating with me. I too started this journey with crippling self-loathing and hated my body. Absolutely. Just thought I was a hideous human being. So deeply painful. And it was like, I remember going to my first Tantra workshop and I just couldn't ignore how big and loud the voice had gotten, that I was forced to do something about it. And I knew that self-love thing isn't an intellectual experience. It's an emotional, spiritual, physical experience. Like you have to do it in the body, and you got to bring all the heart and soul that you pour into other people and find a way to pour it into yourself. And you can't think your way to it. There's if we could think our way to it, man, Oprah would have saved all our lives. No, she saved some of our lives, but she couldn't hand us the self-esteem we knew we should have had.
Yes.
And I think also, one of the things I say about a lot of Tantra teachers is the reason why we became Tantra teachers is so that we are held accountable, so that we actually do the practices. Because like so many students, they'll do some practices, they get incredible transformation from it. They love that workshop, but then they're not always consistent. They don't always continue. It's this thing that kind of touched their life like a lightning bug came and kissed them, but you really need the lightning bolt to keep going.
Love that.
So I hear like one of the ways that you keep going is to do the work and to stay in the work and to help other people really forces you to stay consistent in it. Do you just work with women? Is that who your primary audience is? Okay.
Nope.
So tell us a little bit, like what's different between working with men, women, or couples?
Oh my God, this is such a question. So in business, right, when they always say, who's your client avatar? And I really get the worth of that. I think that's so beautiful. I understand like energetically why we do it. And I always was like, oh, like, I don't know. And it's funny because my clientele really not two people are alike. In a sense, we're alike, right? Because we have things come up around body image or confidence or sexual pleasure. But if you put these people out, on a screen, you'd be like, what? Like, how do they, intersect? And I feel very grateful for that. And again, that everyone is held differently, right? Like everyone has different needs. So some of my somatic practices, I have folks they live this work. So they could easily go into a visualization. They could easily go into an embodiment practice. I have some people that are like, Erica, that's so triggering. I can't. And it's like, okay, that's cool. Like, we're not going to go into a deep visualization. Maybe we just feel, your fingernails to your skin. Or maybe we close your eyes for just 30 seconds just to feel your breath. So for me, I really tailor to where everyone is on their journey. And I know most coaches do that, but it's very important for me to really hold them with where they're at and not pushing, of course, pushing the edge, but in a really safe, manageable container.
And so, other than, helping people with, let's say, self-love and self-worth, and maybe it sounds like you really help people with pleasure, really starting to embody pleasure in new, wonderful ways. I think so many, especially women, have a hard time accessing their pleasure. What about other issues? Like, what are your clients, what are they struggling with? What do you hear over and over and over again that is up in their world that they're reaching out to you to get some relief from?
Totally. A theme is like just general unsatisfaction. So I have the things on paper. Why am I not happy? Or I'm moving toward, like, I'm doing the goal thing. Why am I, which is connected to the pleasure. I do a lot of work in dating and love.
Oh, okay. Say more about that.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so fun. It's so rewarding. But I really help people consciously date. And we know, beginning with dating, really consciously dating and holding ourselves. But a big part of my work is creating safety around dating. And that has been so fabulous, seeing different folks come in. I'm thinking of some people, like I have some men in their 20s and their journey is so different than my client, women clients in their 70s. But it's so fabulous to hold them and what they need on that journey. That love journey, as you know, is so potent and fabulous and fun.
What are some of the things that you give them, like either practices or exercises or things that you help them with in order to feel more safe within that dating sphere?
Yeah,
it's so interesting. Usually people come to me and they're like, I watch these YouTubes and it's like this stereotype, which is great. Like there's a place, but there's, the people that are like, if you want to get the person, do A, B, and C. And so honestly, before we even get into calling in the person, a lot of our work is uncovering and unlearning what they should be doing. So a lot of my male clients were undoing, well, I watched a YouTube or I read a book, that I should be doing this. And we kind of comb through that. We unlearn those patterns. Like, what's your truth? So first and foremost, before we jump into creation and manifesting and all that juice, it's really about like, hold on, let's clear the cobwebs of the stories and start neutral in a way. Because the deal, we come to dating, we come to love with so many freaking stories.
Yeah, what are some of like, whatever those thing that turns into a block?
Yes, a lot of people are nervous being seen and seeing. So I see that a lot, right? Like, I'm nervous really seeing who's in front of me because I just want it to work. Like, I want love so bad. I just want it to work. And then I'm also nervous being seen, like really being seen and really being authentically myself. That's like
I'll be rejected if they really see who I really am.
Totally. I'll be rejected. I'll be abandoned. I'm never good enough. Like, it comes with so much. The love stuff comes with so much worthiness and deserving. That's why for me, when I take people on that dating, journey or that love journey, they're like, I know, like, so much of our work is peppered with the self-love. Because I'm like, listen, you're going to go, like, you may be rejected or someone may ghost you. And how do we hold ourselves through that? So for me, the self-love piece is just like so imperative. Like, it's sandwiched with our work with the dating journey.
And so tell us a little bit of your philosophy on how to actualize self-love. What are the steps that people need to make in order to have that transformation and to really feel that and truly believe it and own it?
I love that. I think for me, for a long time, I was, and this is okay, but I was confusing self-care with self-love.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, I did a face mask. Why don't I love myself? You know what I mean?
Right.
And like,
Totally.
I was like, I'm doing
I gave myself a yoga
Shouldn't I love
class or a
myself now?
massage. Yeah.
right. I was like, wait, like, I don't get it. Like, and I joke about it, but it's like, there's frustration there. Like, I was like, I'm doing the things that Pinterest said to do. Why am I not loving myself? And so I had to come to learn that for me, self-care was a branch of self-care was a branch of self-love. So is self-respect. And I never realized that. I thought I was kind of doing the opposite. Like, let me just check it off and then I'm going to love myself.
Right.
You know, like, I'm going to do the thing and then. So
And
for
then
me,
you should love yourself.
Yeah. And I should love myself. And I should think I'm the, best thing ever. But for me, it really was a journey of knowing myself, being with myself. It was a less, and this is not to shy anyone away, but it was a less glamorous version. Again, I thought I did the sheet mask and life would be fab. You know what I mean? So for me, it's been a very deep journey within myself, holding myself, all the different parts of myself. Like,
Well, I
yeah.
like the word that you use, self-respect. You know, I think
Yes.
that's a
That's
really
a big one.
crucial and important part of the self-love journey, because so often we give up our own needs and desires. We don't even know what our own needs and desires are, first of all.
Yeah.
And then even if we do, we'll give them up in order to, keep the peace or not rock the boat, or, the women do this a lot. Men do it as well. But I think that in doing that, we lose a level of respect for ourselves, or we don't have it to begin with. So curating and cultivating that sense of self-respect is about knowing what your desires, what your wants, what you want to create in your life, and respecting your time, your energy levels, your who you're wasting time and energy with. Stop doing that and start to bring in that energy more and more, so that you can actually start to manifest and co-create with the greater universe the life that you want to come to fruition.
Yeah, I think for me, self-respect was the thing that got me. I was doing it. It came a far way, but the self-respect, like, that really was sobering for me, because I was like, and this is okay, but like, I'm doing things that are not really respectful of myself. Like you said, like the for me, my good girl conditioning. I don't want to rock the boat. I have no boundaries. Like, all of those things checked for me. But when I brought in self-respect, I was like, oh man, like, I can't really hide from this. Like, it's very, I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with clients, when they're coming in, and let's say they're kind of where you were when you started this work, I was just like, well, what does it even mean to love myself? And what does it even mean to respect myself? Like, what are some of the, what's the journey? What's this 1, 2, 3? What are the steps? What are the practices or the tools that can really help them to come to that?
Actualize it.
Yeah, I love that. So I really work regularly with clients in sessions, also offline, with those tools, with that technology, to really start to
explain some of the tools, because I think our audience would love to know more than nuts and bolts.
Specifics.
Yes. Okay, good. I was like, I think we're going there, so let's do it. So I could go on a list, but let me give some few. Let's give some basics. Is first and foremost, I always want my clients to know, like, what we talked about before, like, what are you thinking about yourself? So it's like the mindset piece, right? So for me, self-talk is really important. So I have clients really be aware of, oh, okay, I didn't realize this. I'm really talking bad about myself and I didn't know. Like, great. So first and foremost, we get comfortable with, like, what are you saying about yourself? How are you speaking about yourself? How are you speaking about your desires? And then over time, we learn how to flip those things. So I'll give you an example. I actually told a client this morning. It's like, I just got a new ring. I'm like, great. I want you to put on that ring or that bracelet. And this is a tool I like to do, and you could modify it. And every day you put on that piece of jewelry, and you're living your life. And when you start to have really crusty, crunchy thoughts, like, I'm the worst. Oh my God, look how I look on the Zoom. You gently take it off and you replace it to the other hand, or, you know, whatever you want to do. Like it's a physical, and stop the thought and say, I'm beautiful. I'm doing the best I can. So it's a physical stop, right? Instead of, because sometimes everyone's like, what's your thought mindset, which I love, but sometimes it's hard. And so that is a physical, like, oh, I was being cruel to myself.
It's like a little mini ritual in the middle of the day.
The act of going, okay, that was that thought, but I'm going to choose this one.
And what I love about it is, you know, I used to give people similar, but not quite as loving, which was just like put a rubber band around your wrist. And every time that you like start talking to yourself, like your best friend would never talk to yourself like that. Not the rubber band, but I love this little like shift the jewelry. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that too. I would like put on a swipe of lips because I'm noticing I could use a little more color, darling. Oh my God, look at me now. Unstoppable.
I love it. It's true. And speaking of, actually, you actually brought up something great, is like we see ourselves so much more than generations past, right? Like we're on conversations like this, we're on Zooms, we pass the mirror, we're on social media, like we see ourselves.
We can take selfies like crazy.
Yes. And so my invite is, I always tell people, every time, talk about initiation ritual, every time you see that camera or the visual of yourself, can you give yourself 3 compliments? Because you know the first impulse, I mean, I'm on here right now, I'm like, oh, my hair, like it's easy to go toward the what's wrong, what needs fixing. And so
we're like hardwired for it.
We're hard, yes. And so it's like, how can we make rightness part of our vocabulary for ourselves? And so people are like, oh my God, I'm like, if you can't think, like, go granular. Like, oh, I love my left eyebrow. Or, you know, if that is too triggering, I love that I showed up for this today. It's just another ritual, especially for our witchy, you know, ritual folks. Like, it's a ritual. It's an initiation to get us back into self-love. It changes those neural pathways.
And it's repetitive practice.
Yes,
and that repetitive practice can start to change the conditioning because, like, you know, there's so much conditioning that has supported us thinking and talking to ourselves in such a way that in order for us to make real lasting changes, we have to practice repetition over and over and over and over and over again, a different way of talking to ourselves.
Yeah,
otherwise, it doesn't change. So you have to change your conditions to change your conditioning. And when you've had 3 to 4 to 5 decades of a conditioned response to what you see in the mirror every time you look in the mirror or on camera, if you want any hope in transformation, that repetitious shift of doing a course correct is like the key to success, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny too. I had a client today and she was like, I knew you were going to ask me this. So I came and I did it. I'm like, thank you. And so we did celebrations, and a lot of these tools are so basic. And I talk to people like, I know, even myself, when I first got into this work, I'm like, I know all this. That's great that we know this from a brain perspective.
Yeah, knowing and doing it are 2 different things.
So different. And it's so funny. I have a conversation a lot with a friend, and she's like, I know this stuff. I went to school for psychology. I'm like, that's amazing. What a privilege. Do you practice it? She's like, shut up. You know? So it's like, we really, like practicing.
Yeah,
like even celebration. It sounds, oh, Erica, that's so silly. That's so basic. Practicing daily celebrations. What is it really like to practice daily celebrations? Like really going through your day, like, yes, I showed up for that thing. Yes, I did that hard thing. Yes, I moved my body, whatever. But like living this work is the embodiment.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like we have to bring a level of compassion too, because that, you know, old phrase, like we're our own worst critics is so very true. Like nobody in the world is walking around thinking the bad things about you that you are thinking. And it's such a waste of chi. It's like, what if we take that precious life force energy and we uplift ourselves and think about like, well, what would my dear friend be saying to me right now about the way I'm showing up or the way I look or the way I'm walking my talk or not? You know, what would somebody outside of me who really loves me and cares about me and honors me, what would that voice be saying? I think bringing that forward as well is a really helpful way for us to practice a different patterning in our minds, right? We've got these synapses in our brains. They run through our hearts, they run through our guts, and they sure as shit run through our genitals as well. And so, you know, when we start to create new neural pathways and new neural networks between these different brains in the body, then that's when transformation starts to change. And, I could just see your people, Erica, the ones who have known you for a long time and just being like, wow, you were that person and now you're this person. And like the radical transformation that you went through by utilizing these practices and really putting them into motion in your life.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube, maybe you're listening to it, and if you could watch it, you would see just how radiant Erica is. Like, you can tell that there's this embodied person who's done the work, and it shines out of her skin, it shines out of her eyes, and it shines from her smile. And I think that more than any transformation that people want, like that's how someone's done their work, because it's really about a radiance that starts to come from the inside that is so visible. And what's so interesting is people don't always know how to articulate, like, what is it about that person? But what you notice is that you're attracted to them. You notice that they've got this confidence and you kind of want that to rub off on you. It's like you just wish you could rub shoulders with the person who just seems like they have their fucking shit together. And so, like, I kind of want to steer this now towards sex and pleasure, because I know you're a sex coach. Yep. And so tell us a little bit about how you're helping people who feel like they're failing at the sex game. And maybe that's not even how they would describe it. Yeah. Like, what are people coming to you when they're really struggling with pleasure and sex?
Yeah, I think
or like the opposite sex, because I think I'm sure there's a segue in a lot of the dating coaching that you're doing that also has to do with the fact that they're horny.
Yes.
Like, where does sex come into the conversation?
Totally. I love this. And I also really quick want to throw back, because it connects to this, is during my self-loathing journey, pleasure was that, like I said, I went to therapy, I did things, that was fabulous. But pleasure is the thing that was the healing balm for me.
Ding, ding.
Yeah. Because I was like, I don't really care what I look like, and the Tantra as well. Like, I just saw it was a TikTok before this, and the person was, I'm going on a tangent, but it makes sense. He's like, a green flag for me is someone that like takes up space and cackles. He's like, because that they're alive. He's like, they're not worried about,
what
being
they
presentational. Yes. He's like,
I love
want
that.
them to cackle.
They're
like,
just
that is
in their bliss.
Yes. He's like, that's a green flag for me. Like, he's like, take up space, lady. He's like, I want to hear you cackling like a seal. I'm like, yes. I was like, that is it.
Genius.
And for me, I was so obsessed. I have an acting background as well. So I'm very hyper aware of how am I being perceived, right? Like, my movement practice, how does this look? How, like, that's a thing. Mm-hmm. And for me, pleasure was like, who the frig cares? Like, it was so liberating that it was like, this is about me feeling good. This is about me feeling nourished, not what do I look like? And so I wanted to throw us back how healing that was. I was like, how am I ever going to get over this, lack of self-confidence? And it was the pleasure work. And that's why I'm obsessed with talking about it, because I'm like, it changed my life and how I perceive myself.
That you made that correlation, because when you're in the throes of pleasure, when you're just like, you are in high levels of arousal, you lose all self-consciousness.
Yes,
like
totally.
You just stop worrying about like what your body looks like when you are like, and you're just going for it, and your body is like, it's like, you can't think about your stomach, you can't think about your thighs, you're not thinking about your how many chins you have, like that inner voice that is like, how do I look, dissolves in the moment of orgastic experience. And then when you're even doing that consciously with someone else who's being looped into your orgastic experience, and you're watching like the joy and the bliss that they're experiencing because you're experiencing, like, all that shit dissolves. Now it can return real fast in a nanosecond, but I think sometimes we don't even let ourselves reach those peaks because we're so distracted by a sense of self-consciousness. And it doesn't even have to be about your appearance. It could be about your performance, right? Yes. Like, it could be about like what your cock doing or not doing. It could be about, I don't feel anything and I feel numb and I should be like having multiple orgasms. Like, whatever the judgment is that has you feeling self-conscious, it does get blown to smithereens at the peak of an orgasm. Can you say more about that?
I can. And you know, it's funny. I promise I'm coming back. I promise. But it's funny because in my embodiment, when I teach erotic movement, and I always say in the beginning of my classes, I've been every size. I've looked every way. I've had every hair color. I've been a size probably 24, 26, and a size 0.
Yeah.
And the work of radiance is magnetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I have loved myself through, I've been cruel to myself at every size, but I've known how to love myself through every size, and it freaking shows. You know, like you said, and I thank you for paying that compliment. People always say, I love your energy. And I'm like, thank you. I'm being seen. So I wanted to throw that out because I think we have so much conditioning. Like, yeah, I'll do the radiance, but I'll also look like this. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It was so healing.
Or I'll
for
do
me.
the radiance once I look like this.
Yes. Once I get to this, then I'll do the radiance. And so for me, it was so healing to be, I'm working. I don't feel my best, but like I'm feeling my best. And people are like, holy mama. So thank you for bringing that up. Back to the sexuality. I bring up the pleasure because for me, sex can be so loaded. So I always bring in with my clients, how are we living pleasure daily?
Outside of the bedroom?
Yes, because you know the deal.
In
like,
every moment?
In every moment, right? Because if there's no pleasure, and if it's desert city, and then I'm like, go have an orgasm, they're like, excuse you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like, how do I even have one of those? Yeah,
right,
I haven't had one in 5 years.
About? Right. Like, also, like, that's so jarring to my body and my nervous system. What are you talking about, lady? You know, so for me, a really big LOL, wink, wink, lube, but for the sexual empowerment work is really living the pleasure every day. I know I went on a tangent, but I do want to highlight that because so often we're like, let's get to the sex. And I'm like, it's also how we live.
Yeah, it's a difference between tantric sex and a tantric life.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
a
so
tantric
good.
life is like living a turned on life, whether you're in or out of the bedroom. It's being lit up by life.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and there's you know, in Chinese medicine, we're always looking to focus on what is working, you know, focus on the health that is there and augment and amplify that health. And that's going to push out the dark, the turbid, the sticky, the dis-ease, all of that. And so it's the same thing when we're bringing pleasure in to fill ourselves up with that level, that frequency, that vibration. And I want to caveat for the pain, because we don't know what pleasure is if we don't know what pain is. So we're talking about all the time, pleasure all the time. But I think there's also, there can be deep shadow. If you're overriding your pain, it's going to have a deeper, bigger grip on you if you're pleasure bypassing, you know? And so we want to actually not only feel the painful sides of life as well and be present to them and acknowledge them and give them space to be, but to see if we can't find some pleasure in that pain. Why are we even here as human beings? Like, what is our purpose? And it's like, we've come into this dualistic reality from unity consciousness into duality, right? And we've come here to really feel, to really experience. There's things in that unity place where we've all come from source, where we don't get to experience the deep, deep pleasure and the ecstatic bliss. And we also don't get to experience the gnarly, intense pain and grief and sorrow and rage and sadness. And so I think that, you know, if we can really experience all of it as an opportunity to just be in life, to be in love with life, then there's that way of experiencing pleasure all the time.
Well, I think what you're saying is super interesting, because what also comes to mind when I hear you say that, Willow, is when we avoid feeling the pain, when we avoid feeling the grief and the sorrow and the rage and the upset, then it's like those wet blankets you talk about. Everything gets really damp and heavy. And that's where, like, we become depressed. We become pressed in and we become numbed out. So when you don't feel the icks, right, it's like you can't feel the yums, because you don't get to numb one part of your system and it not numb the other part of your system. So there's this part of like having to embrace all of it. And can you yum your yucks on some level? You know, can you realize that your yucks actually, there's a payoff. there's something in your subconscious that keeps on driving you to become broke over and over and over again, so that you can have the story of, woe of God, I'm always broke. Or, like, go deeper, go into like, ooh, like, what is that? And what is it that I'm afraid to see? And can I be willing to get curious and unveil some of this subconscious, unconscious stuff and bring it up into consciousness? And sometimes that means making fun of the shit. Last night I was tying up my husband because I'm practicing ropes.
Love it.
And like, we would break character. I'm trying to be all like dominant, and he's trying to like follow my instruction. Lower his eyes and look at the ground. Look at my feet. Oh, and I'm tying it up. And we just had the biggest crack up because I was starting to like kind of make fun of him because he was lamenting the other day a frustration at work. And so then we started to make fun of like this frustration that almost has him wanting to quit his job. Like, he's so fed up with this thing. And then we just got to like make fun of it. Like, oh, where, you can't do this thing. And we had such a joyous moment of bringing levity to this thing that's been really bothering him. And it kind of took him being tied up and not being able to maneuver that allowed him to just sort of like relax into this levity. And I don't know why I'm taking us on this tangent, other than to say, sometimes we just have to take a look at our whole life and lighten it up and not be afraid of it, not make the hard things so hard, but to like face them head on.
I love that.
So, I mean, with all that tangent going on all over the place, Erica, I'm sort of wondering what's your take on what Willow and I shared.
Love that. And it's funny. It's like, I think that's I have two things. That's what attracted me to the pleasure work. Sure, it's like, it could be pleasures, and I always say pleasures and boas and chaise lounge, and, it could be someone feeding me grapes. But also for me, the pleasure was a pathway to my aliveness. And sometimes my aliveness is being in the throes of grief. And even though that sucks, I want to be alive to my grief. Like, I want to be like, I lived out loud. Yeah. And I was there through every tear, every heartbreak. I don't want to call that in, but right. But like, I want to be alive.
I want to be present to it.
Yes. Like what's funny is this work, yes, it's given me pleasure and da-da-da, but for, a lot of grief and heaviness, I'm so proud of how I showed up and how I'm showing up. I'm dealing with a lot of heavy personal things, and I attribute it to this work because I could sit in the face of death and be like, okay,
yeah,
I got you.
And I made it through that.
Yep. And I could hold this. I could be with this. And I'm glad you brought that up too, with the caveat with pleasure. I always tell my clients, they're like, I know, like my famous line. I'm like, don't use these tools as a weapon against yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's a very fine line of like, don't gaslight yourself with pleasure, like,
right.
Don't, and we have to, and people are like, oh yeah, I was kind of like avoiding going to places because I was doing pleasure. And that's a fine line of like, yeah, hold it, being with it.
I mean, my experience is like, if you really want the big pleasure, if you want that cosmic pleasure, you actually have to feel all the other things.
Yes.
Like it's kind of the reward of going through the tunnel. Like, it's kind of the reward of showing up with vulnerability. If you want the cosmic pleasure Tantrics talk about, you got to actually go into the vulnerable, scary places, because that's what ushers you to that. It's like, you can't have one without the other. And it's almost like you got to kind of pay the piper. And guess what? It doesn't feel as bad as you're imagining. It actually feels amazing to let go. It feels amazing. That cry is as good as an orgasm. There are more important places to go than coming. There are really incredible places to visit.
Yeah, no, but I'm glad you brought up that point. I think that's super important about the darkness and about all of the things. That's a huge part of this work.
Yeah, I think that the pleasures become quite a buzzword as well these days, and so many clients come and they're like, well, I don't even know what my pleasure is. Like, I'm so used to, like, I have a lot of male clients. I'm so used to giving, like, that's where I find my pleasure is in the other person getting off and the other person's arousal and their pleasure. I don't even know what it feels like to lose myself in a sexual experience. I don't even know what it feels like to to, I don't know what turns me on. I don't know what my arousal is. And I think that, we have to start to use the pleasure pathways in the body, like actual meridian system in the body, and these pathways of pleasure that open through our glands and our chakras and these channels in our physical body in order to start to experience the medicine of pleasure, like the healing that it brings, and the vitality that it builds in your life, the longevity that it brings to you as a human being. So what are some of the, like, I don't know, just like some of the opportunities that you share with clients? Like, let's say they are in a deep grief portal. Let's say they, the relationship they really wanted didn't work out, or the home that they thought they were going to get didn't come through, or, those big losses that seem so astronomical, and they really throw you into a state of shock, a state of being triggered, a state of I'm not safe in the world, and they go into their protective pattern. So if somebody's in that pattern, they're in that triggered state, like, how do you help them get out of it?
Yeah, honestly, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a huge part of it. Like, we might not be presencing pleasure at that moment, or we might, but like our vibe through those sessions, through that time, is holding them through the grief, holding them through, through the darkness, through the processing. So I want to throw this out. I met someone recently, and people say this a lot, but she was like, can I ask you something that might trigger you? I was like, sure. Like, what's up? And she was like, why is your name We the Light? She's like, because I think you're kind of selling yourself short. She's like, I interact with your work, and you're so much more than the light. She's like, and I think that's a disservice. Like, you're going to the world presenting We the Light. She's like, but you're a cauldron. She's like, you hold people through their pleasure, their darkness. And I share that because, first of all, I'm like, I know it's a joke to my name, with Wiederlight, We the Light, but I bring that back because that is part of the work, is like teaching people how to hold themselves through all of the different emotions, all the different seasons, all the different cycles. And I think for coaching, a lot of times people join the journey because it's sexy. You know what I mean? It's like, what am I going to get at the end of this? Like, and I know for
it's
me,
like juicy. It's sort of like statusizing. It's like, oh, look how cool I am.
Yeah, it's like, what am I? I've done that before too. Like, I'm going to be transparent. In the past, like, I would have signed up for program. I'm like, ooh, this is be so hot. And so when we hit the fit, not the blocks, but we hit life, and they're like, oh man, it's like, yeah, let's learn the tools and technology to hold ourselves, not through just like, ooh, we're in our radiance and we're sexy, because that's fun and fab, but it's all the things. So I am glad that you brought that up, because I think that's really important, and people don't expect it. Because I think, oh, I'm going to work with a pleasure coach. I'm going to work with a sex coach. It's going to be so hot. I'm like, it will, but it's hot is a different way.
It's going to come with more. Yeah.
Totally. So that's, for me, emotional processing through different avenues is a big part of my work, and making sure my clients have those places to process and have the space to process. So it's not always rainbows, butterflies, and pleasure.
Can you give us like some more specifics around how you would help them in those places? Like, what would you want to impart to them?
Yeah, so many different things, right? So there's different tools. Like, sometimes I do more traditional talk therapy with clients, right? Like, we're just verbally starting to process what's going on. Sometimes people are like, all right, I'm scared, but I'm ready. And then we do embodiment work. So maybe we work through rage in their body. Maybe we work through grief in their body. But again, right? Like, everyone's at a different place. Some people are like, don't make me get in my body. I'm like, okay. Like, maybe for a few sessions, it just feels safe to process out loud, or to journal, or here's some prompts, or I'm going to create a ritual for you. And other people are like, no, let's go. Put me in my body. Let's throw some pillows, scream. I need to, do some breath work around this. But the great news is that you use, so breath work, movement, maybe journaling, talk therapy. It's kind of like where, feeling where the person's at and what medicine they might need, and giving them all the tools, right? Because God willing, they're not with me I would love them but like, I want them to go live their life and have their tools. So make sure that they have their toolbox so they can go and live it, What
is like one sort of like pearl of wisdom that you would give to to sort of everyone in the world who's on this path to self-love, to self-respect, to finding their way to a deeper relationship with their physical pleasure, and also, expanding their levels of consciousness through that.
So I think first and foremost, my little pearl would be, this is so worth it. You're so worthy and deserving of it. I've seen it time and time and time again, the ripples of how your life will change, how your community, how friends, family, how people interact with you. It's such a worthwhile cause. And I always say it's not selfish, it can be selfless. And for me, I feel like pleasure, I'll speak for myself, when I'm in pleasure, again, with the nuances, when I'm in my aliveness, my pleasure, I'm in one of the highest forms of integrity. Because I don't need anyone. I'm not grasping. I know how I'm well resourced. I walk
You're
through the
not
world.
trying to get anything or get anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not like trying to get approval. I'm not like being sneaky, and that's okay. It's human nature, but like I'm not trying to be like manipulative or sneaky. I am well resourced. I'm well taken care of, and I think that is a gift to my community. And so I say that to share, right? Like that it's a gift when we do this work.
I like that you use the word integrity, because it's really about being in alignment. Like, I'm going to pursue this because it lines up with who I want to be in the world. It lines up with how I want to live my life. It lines up with pursuing, the things that I know are going to make my life beautiful and worth living, and beating myself up and treating myself like I'm a piece of shit is not in alignment with that. And so it's like getting an integrity with how I perceive myself is as important as having integrity at my job, is as important as having integrity in my relationship. So if you believe in value integrity, you got to change how you hold yourself and how you're going to be the best version of yourself for the world. I really like that you use that language. Tell us a little bit about your free gift. I know you've got an ebook.
Yes. Okay. So you're going to love this because we actually talked a lot about this today. So it's called From Perfectionist to Pleasure Expert, which I was, as I talked about before, like anxiety, like ripping everything apart. I was so in my head. So we talked about my journey and how I became a pleasure expert. And for me, how I had in the book there, it's a very short ebook, but it's great. Tools, techniques, how I learned how to be in my radiance, how I learned how to take up space. And again, there's some stories, but mostly tools, which is great. We get right to the core that you can start practicing right away. Quick read, lots of tools. It's fab. And I always say to people, take it, read it, ask questions. I'm not one of those coaches that's like far away from my work. Like I'm like, let's talk about it. We're like, I have a question or I have pushback. What do you think about this? Like, I'm like, let's talk about it. That's what I'm here for. Like, let's, hold us through what comes up for you.
And if people wanted to work with you, what's their first step in pursuing that?
Love that. So I actually have a ton of free resources on my website, which is it's on my little thing here too, wethelight.org, www.wethelight.org. And it's called, which you're going to love, Mojo Makeover Assessment. And so what it is essentially it's a discovery call. And what we do in that first 45 minutes or so is it's for real, a free, no strings attached session. We work through, maybe we talk about sexual empowerment, love, dating, radiance, all the things. And it's just a session and we feel into it. And then the last few minutes we reserve to feel into, is this a match? And if it's not, God bless. You know what I mean? Or if you're like, Erica, I like this, but I kind of want to work with someone like this. Any recs? Absolutely. So this is just a space where we can dive in, have that free session. If we're fit to work together, great. If we're not, great. But I always say to people, take me up on the offer. Take me, because it might not be there forever.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was such a pleasure. We appreciate all that you gave our audience today. And please make sure you tune in because the show's not over. Oh, no, it's not. We got the dish coming up with myself and Dr. Willow. So everybody stay tuned and love, 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 love.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's such a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. This is amazing.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
All right, everyone. We are here to dish it out on our interview with Erica Wiederlight. And it was so fun just getting to know her and her journey through, how far she's come. You can really see it. You can really feel it. And just from that place of like self-loathing to that place of radical self-love. And I really loved that piece that she brought in around self-respect. I think that's a really integral part of a self-love journey. And that distinction that she made, it's like, oh, I gave myself a face mask. Why don't I love myself? I thought that was so cute.
Totally. And so relatable.
Yeah.
Why do I do all these like,
Things for myself.
yeah, like these wellness practices of like making sure that I take time for myself and
I
blah, blah,
meditated. I
blah.
did breath work. I went to
Yeah. I took a
yoga.
hot
Why didn't I
bath.
love myself?
Yeah, like why isn't this translating into transformation?
Yeah.
And yeah, because it's got to go so much deeper than that. And
Yeah.
you really got to change your thoughts and change your conditioning, and using things like self-respect and having integrity, I think, are really integral parts of making those shifts. You just have to be careful that you're not using that language to then shame yourself. Like
Right.
when you do something self-indulgent that maybe you feel you're worried about because you think you're be damaging yourself. I know as an overeater and having eating disorder issues, it was like every time I fucked up, I used that as material to like do the self-bashing again, when really
Yeah.
what I need to do was make room for the
Right.
fact that binge eating has been a successful way of getting out of really painful states. So, it has a service. I have to look at actually the binge eating differently. It's not the enemy. It's actually
Right.
been doing its job.
It's been
And
helping you in
sometimes I'm
some
going to still
way.
use it
Yeah.
to do that job, but can I do it in full awakeness? Can I do it without the shame? And when I practice that, I don't binge the way I used to. It's not as excessive. It's not as dangerous. It's not as crazy. It's not as panicky.
Mhm.
Like the whole landscape of that relationship has evolved
There's not
because
as
I
much
think the power,
neediness in it. Yeah.
right? When you
Mhm.
treat it with respect and you see it for what it is, not the enemy,
Yeah.
and when you respect yourself through the process, it changes everything. I really loved the use of that. And I loved how she was like, and then find an object
That
and
was
put
great.
power in it. And so
Yeah.
catch yourself. Here's a pattern interrupt. Take it off one wrist, put it on another. I mean, I thought that was
Yeah,
genius.
that was really
Change the rings, put them on another finger. I'm going to really utilize that when
great.
I need it.
I love one.
I
for
loved that.
sure.
Great tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the dating piece. The dating piece is complicated, I think, for so many of us. I've definitely worked with people in the dating space and kind of navigating, like feeling all the disappointment that comes from dating and wondering like
Mhm.
what's wrong with them and them picking themselves apart. And really, you got to go deeper than that. So if she doesn't have a one size fits all protocol on how to pull in the beloved, it is, first got to undo some things, some conditioned ways that you see yourself before you
Yeah.
can start doing the manifestation.
Yeah, unlearning is a big part of the journey. I think, and it's not just. I think so often we identify, well, what's wrong with me, and why do I need to unlearn these things about myself? It's like, well, it's also just we're swimming in a society and a culture that's what's ingrained in us. So, we're having to kind of get out of the water and dry ourselves off so that we can have a different viewpoint, different perspective around.
Yeah. And, I think what else, it's like you got to be coachable.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the problem is like this work will not work for you if all you want is do steps A through Z, and
Yeah.
you'll be different on the other side.
Yeah.
Like you actually have to go a little bit layer deeper than that. You actually have to be influenceable. It's not about like what the coach can do for you. It's how
Yeah.
much can you do for you by
Exactly.
using the coach's influence to take yourself as deep as you can go.
Yeah, you have to make it your own. You have
Yeah.
to take what you're learning with any coach along this path, and you have to make it your own. You have to integrate it into your own life, and you have to become what the transformation that you want to see. And I
And
loved what one of the
Take
things.
responsibility for your resistance.
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
not the coach's fault that you have resistance. You're the one who has resistance. Own it. And it might be you need a little bit of time. Might be you need a little bit of space to unravel that resistance, but it's yours.
Yeah,
know?
resistance is one of those things that, it's like on the other side of it's the opposite of surrender is that resistance. And when we actually meet that resistance face to face, if we keep looking at it and we keep meeting it and we keep going through it, then on the other side is surrender. So Thought it was a great episode, great interview. So grateful to have Erica in the world, doing the work, walking her talk, and showing up for her client. So
Yeah.
much love to y'all.
Much love to y'all. Have a beautiful night, morning, or evening. Love, love, love.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.